Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in another of our APPI Focus on ARV. APPI is all about education and working on getting more and more people involved in ARV. And this is an example of our Learn by Doing type webinars. In each of these, I always bring up a topic, one that interests me, and today it's entanglement energy and RV-ARV hits. So here's the outline for today. For the first half an hour, we will go over what ARV is all about for newbies and old bees. And then I want to talk about this entanglement energy, which I feel is very, very fundamental to what's going on really in life, but also in RV and ARV. So I'll talk about that for about an hour. And then from last month, we have feedback, and then we'll do a new prediction. So that's how the Learn by Doing works. You'll get to see feedback, and you'll actually be making a prediction. So let's start with, what is ARV all about? Associative remote viewing. It starts with what is indeed a remote viewing session. The tasking for that session is describe and sketch your feedback target. Okay, that's something you're going to see in the future. Here's our timeline. Okay, so this is when you would do your remote viewing session and you create a transcript. And remember, there's one and only one target that you will see during your feedback session, and it is your task to describe and or sketch that. So over here, later, is the feedback session. And feedback is very important. So actually during this session, you now have the truth point, but you will now describe and sketch your feedback target again, intending to entangle us. Remember, we're all about precognition. So by working with your feedback here, you're like lighting it up so you can get that information earlier. From here, it's called retrocausality. It's like you're causing it to come up here earlier. When we think about it going forward in time, that's precognition, pre-knowing. But it's all about entangling these two sessions. Now, to make this practical, and in regular remote viewing, not always, but most of the time, there is feedback of one sort or another. So this is really very much like normal remote viewing. But now, in between, we do analysis judging of the remote viewing transcript. So here, we now have the ability to actually make investment decisions, and I'm going to explain to you how that works. This has to do with, for example, we're using financials now, and binary, either up or down. Now we use stops or limits, so it's all within one day, but it's basically binary up or down. We do similar things with sports. And the way you make a decision is the tasker, and you as a remote viewer don't have to really know anything about this, but the tasker selects two different targets, and we're doing everything with computers, so it takes one of 800 randomly. And one of those targets is associated. Notice the word associated comes up. This is where the associations are. One of these targets is associated with up. Guess what? The other one is associated with down. So the actual target that will be shown for feedback will depend on the outcome of the price movement, whether in fact the particular investment financial we're using goes up or down. And so this is in violet. the feedback session will always be associated with the actual up or down. So guess what this means? If I'm sitting here as the judge and I get a really excellent match to the down transcript, I'm going to invest in the down direction. If I get a really good match to the up possible target, then I will go up. And if I get nothing which matches either one really well, I'll pass. Okay, so that's ARV with the event, of course, occurring between the judging and the actual outcome, so I can, in fact, do an investment. So the event occurs here. I put in an investment, and up or down, and then we get the feedback session. Now, one of the things to be aware of here, as opposed to normal precognition, is we're doing this on purpose. Very often precognition occurs kind of randomly. That phone call you get from someone you haven't thought of for 20 years, and you just happen to think of him, and a minute later the phone rings. Deja vus are a type of precognition, other things like that. But we're really doing this on purpose, and it begins with the feedback session in this strange precognition, retrocausality kind of space, because this is the truth point. This is where you want to spend a fair amount of time. And the cue is describe and sketch your, and we use a 6-digit random coordinate to be associated with this particular target. It's largely bookkeeping, but it is also referred to as a target reference number. So it's explicitly associated with this. Now, what is the target? The target is a photosite. A photosite is, in one sense, a photograph, but remote viewers like to go to sites, and they are used to doing that. And so the photosite refers to the particular site where the photo was taken, and your consciousness goes there and gathers the normal information that it can get both from the photo and the site, colors, shapes, things like that. And when it moves to the site, it can pick up other things like the sounds, smells, tastes, which it's not going to get directly off a picture, though it might be inferred. And that's kind of the point of a photosite. It's just what can be readily verified because it's right there on the photo, or easily inferred from the photo. That's the only things which you should report, because remember, the judge in here, he's going to have the photo to look at, and only the photo. He won't know what's 100 yards away. And so there's one movement which a lot of remote viewers do, where they go 1,000 feet up and look at the site. Unless it's a very big site, that often does not work. You know, our photo sites could be big things, but they could also be small things. So our targets are basically pictures expanded into this understanding that you can get any information that your 5 senses could get, including emotions, ideas. Okay. Now, I believe this makes the ARV, kind of the concept of it, easy. People who don't believe in precognition, of course, just can't get it. because they can't get how you can entangle these two. But once you kind of get the idea of precognition, I think it's relatively straightforward. And while we see beginner's luck sometimes and then dips, that seems to happen quite often. When you want to get really good at this, reliably good, which is what we're looking for, of course, it's practice, 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 like a doctor or a shaman. Now, remote viewing is very unique to each viewer. What I'd like to do now is not precognition, but just for fun to do a little exercise, get a blank sheet of paper. This is not remote viewing, but I want so I'm going to flash a picture, and I'd like you to sketch and write down any words that you get from it. Okay, so have pencil and paper ready. Okay, here, Anita, I'm going to mute you. Okay, you've got your pencil and paper ready, so let's hope this works. This should flash. Okay, 3, 2, 1, 0. Oop, 3, 2, 1, 0. There you go. Why don't you put in the chat box to everyone what you saw, and if it's a sketch you sketched, describe the sketch. Because remote viewing, things come in fast like that. That's why I'm doing this exercise. Did anybody get anything? Okay, it was too fast for you. It came across on mine. Did nobody see anything? Not even a color or anything like that? Okay, I guess that's nothing. Is that true? Yeah, I see it from Anita. Anybody else? So it was really all negative, huh? Okay. Well, that's what it was. That time you probably did see it. It was a little faster. Did you see it this time? It may be it was so fast that the internet didn't. Okay, so you did see it as I went back through it. Okay, so put the words or sketch or something like that. Yes, it was much slower. Did you get any colors? Okay. You don't want to play this game, huh? There you go. Tall, dark, yellow. Anybody else? Yeah, Lila, what did you see? Purple, green. I'm just reading what's in the chat box. Okay, well, usually what would happen is different people would see entirely different things. There I flashed it fast, but now I'll leave it. So tall, great, dark, great, and purple, yes. I don't know if maybe you saw, maybe that was the yellow, and I don't see any particular green, but that's what you got, Anita, and thank you for doing that. And other people would have just picked up different things, and that's how it is in remote viewing. The way each of our consciousness works is unique. What kind of things do we expect to report when you do remote viewing. Um, and of course, that's the first phase of ARV. It's descriptions, words like this, which are very generic. They're words that get ingrained in you when you're very, very young. And they're not the naming of things. Naming of things is a very high intellectual um, level. And, you know, if you do it for 10 pages, you might actually name it. Also, sometimes people do name it. That's called like an AOL if it's that high up, coming from the intellect. But describe, don't name is the general rule. This is the kind of list with all of the categories. This was put together by Daz Smith many years ago. And, you know, as you're reading this list, you can see there, you know, the kind of things that you would use to describe something if you were seeing it and you couldn't name it. You know, the Eiffel Tower, you'd say tall, metal, maybe you'd say open, triangular. You can have aesthetic impacts, unusual, beautiful. So all the things that your normal senses can experience, your subconscious mind, your higher self, whatever you want to call this deeper, higher part of us, can report using your senses. Okay, so are there any questions or comments? Tall, thin, like bamboo trunk. That's interesting. So that's what you saw. Again, the main point I was making there, Pixel, is that people just see different things. You got tall also, but maybe the thin part of the building or something. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, let's move on to entanglement energy, and hopefully gives us some insights into how doing better RV and ARV. Okay, I'm coming at this from the perspective. Wait a second, what happened here? Okay, you know, somehow I'm coming at this from the perspective of quantum mechanics. In other webinars, and I thought I'd include it here, sorry for that, the founders of quantum mechanics, Schrodinger, Bohr, all were forced to come to the conclusion of something which we say, and which is the basis of all of our workshops, which is consciousness is fundamental. And I really want you to get that, because you are working with your consciousness, your personal consciousness. And they were forced into this position because when they were trying to measure things like electrons, and prior to quantum mechanics, we had a model, a simple model of you would have a nucleus, had a neutron and a proton in it, and the electron was sort of like a planet going around the sun, and it had, you know, specific location. That was kind of the model. Well, quantum mechanics and Schrodinger, and this is a quote of his, said the electrons do not orbit the nucleus. Instead, their position is determined by probability. 95% of the time, they can be found in the Bohr proposed orbits. And Bohr had a model for the orbit, but that was all that he could come up with in the context of quantum mechanics, and it was a matter of probability of which orbit it would be in and where in that orbit it would be. It's all probabilities. And that's why you'll often hear on programs when they talk about quantum mechanics and things like that, then when you get down to the very, 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 very small, there's almost nothing there. Turns out there is the 0-point energy field, and I'll talk a little bit about that because I think that is intimately related to consciousness. But this idea that consciousness is fundamental was like forced on them based on their experiments and the model. And the model matched the experiments and still does very beautifully. So this idea that the electron does not exist in the physical world until it's measured is accepted by scientists now. It's the measurement issue that brings it into the physical world. It emerges from the non-physical probabilities in a way we don't understand. But it does get into the physical world from what is basically just pure information. Notice down here I talk about consciousness and information. Well, what is probabilities? It's just information. But information goes much deeper than that in our lives. You look around your room, okay? You know, you feel it's solid and objective, and it is objective. Other people come in your room, they'll pretty much see the same thing. It's in the physical world. However, what you are getting from it is all information. You're getting colors. You're getting shapes. Maybe you're getting motion if you're moving in your chair. All the things your senses could pick up is really just information. Very important to get that. Now, Schrodinger's cat is a think experiment, and I want to talk about it because it illustrates, I think, an important point. Schrodinger's cat is really a metaphor and not the same as an electron. And that's because the cat has already emerged into the physical world. Note that the cat is conscious when placed in the box. So let me remind you, this is the Schrodinger cat experiment. So the cat is already conscious. The cat knows it's conscious. It knows if it's alive. We can debate whether it knows if it's dead or not. That's another issue, but it certainly knows if it is alive. But the fact that it starts out in the physical world, all of its cells, all of it is in the physical world. So notice he's conscious. Also, there's no such thing as a perfectly isolated box. We've done lots and lots of experiments with remote viewing, and remote viewers cannot be isolated. So using telepathy with the cat, outside observer can know whether he's alive. And this is just the really important point I want to make. There's this emergence concept where you're coming from someplace, which is basically all probabilities, versus being in the physical world and having reality, which is still information-based, with your consciousness in that physical world, this physical world. So can the cat be alive and dead at the same time? The answer, I believe, is no. Now, electrons can have a probability of being in two different places, of having up spin, down spin. You know, they have different characteristics, and the key point with the electrons is it's all based on probabilities. Um, and so they call that superposition. And it's almost like both of them are real, but they aren't until you measure it. But they both could possibly be real. Okay. So all things in the physical world are conscious once they emerge from the non-physical. So that's cats and electrons. Now, this concept of emergence, I think, is very important. This emergence is from something like the Akashic Record. I think the Matrix. Ingo Swann used the term Matrix a lot. I'm using the universe of collective consciousness because I believe that's exactly descriptive of what's going on. And I will have more to say about that. So this universe of collective consciousness, I use this as the symbol. And let's talk about it. If you really get into, and I've been, just working in this field and as a scientist, it's like I can't help get down into the depths of this. It's just like, in my bones, as a scientist to try to understand it. And what does this consciousness is fundamental really mean? So that was what this model is trying to express and then apply it. So the idea that consciousness is, and this is a lot of fun. I love to capitalize the fundamental. So this blue represents the universe of collective consciousness, the UCC, and it contains everything consciousness touches. And when I say everything, I really mean everything. If you can think about it, if you can sense it, it's in here. Any other sentient being can sense it, it's in here. Any sentient being or anything else which has consciousness, past, present, and future, it's in here. Now, this is an interesting and I think important realization that this is really a circle without a boundary. It cannot have a boundary because as soon as you postulate something being outside, it's inside immediately because it's crossed your consciousness. So anything consciousness touches is in here and it's got no outer boundary. Now, it is interesting that our physical world seems to be like that too. There's no place you can go and say, hey, I'm outside our physical world. So now, what does this mean? Let's just take a moment to think about this. This construct, this universe of collective consciousness that contains what's going on with you right now, what went on with you a month ago, what's going to go on with you tomorrow and a year from now, they're all in there. Well, this is like, I think, the perfect definition of oneness. There is no separation. It's oneness. And I think perfect harmony, perhaps pure spirituality. And it's a place of pure information right now, looking at it here, because consciousness touches it. Consciousness is all about information. But now let's see if we can relate this to the physical world. I've now put a thing in here. So this is a thing consciousness touches. Now, understand, consciousness occurs in the physical world. The idea of consciousness is in the UCC, certainly, but I'm talking about your conscious moment right now, okay? You have a conscious moment right now of something. Maybe it's your computer monitor or your smartphone, whatever it is, okay? Anything which you are specifically conscious of, one thing, a gestalt, whatever, this has to have a fuzzy boundary because we're now in, we are calling it a thing. We are acting as if it's separate from everything else, but we know it can't be because it comes from this UCC where there are no boundaries. So this is the basic connection between pure information and the physical world. When a thing emerges into the physical world, it does it, who knows how, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but it is a thing with a fuzzy boundary. Now, what do I mean? What are the implications of that? The implications of that are that uncertainty is introduced. Just like in quantum mechanics, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Well, we have uncertainty here. Even when the electron is measured, it's never measured exactly. There is some uncertainty in that measurement, but it is in the physical world. Now, here's where entanglement energy also comes in, EE. It has the purpose, in my opinion, two main purposes. One is it takes energy to maintain this illusion of separateness. You know, you're looking at your monitor and you think it's just a separate thing, not connected to anything else. Well, of course, it's giving out radiations. It's got a history. Depending on what you want to define as the monitor, there's always more. The inside red is sort of what you would define as it, but it's got vaguenesses about it. And yet, it's got this illusion of being a separate thing. And so there's entanglement energy in there, keeping it as a separate thing. And then the other thing entanglement energy does is it is the communication channel with the UCC. It emerged from the UCC, but it's still in the UCC. So what's going on there? Well, that's the communication channel. So this entanglement energy is as fundamental as you can get in terms of the connection between all information, non-physical, into the physical world. And notice, I don't mean matter. If you think of an idea, you know, you think of some way of putting new things together, but it isn't in the physical world. That idea was touched by your consciousness. So that idea came up from the UCC. Okay, I hope you're getting that. If not, I'm looking at the chat box, or you can. Okay. Now, energy. Why do I use that? Well, that's really the most fundamental term in terms of our physical world. And it can be defined as the capacity for doing work. And whether it's with ideas or in the physical space, energy seems to be exactly the right term for this. And that is, in fact, what it does in the physical world. Okay, so the ability to do work. Now, this connection between all information in the UCC, past, present, future, any sentient being, ETs, their information is in here. You know what else? This model clearly says rocks have consciousness. Since we've measured them, they've come up here. An electron has consciousness. So this model would would say that. But now, what is the connection between these two things, the world of information and then being in the physical world? Well, Hal Puthoff, as I think most of you know, was the original director at Stanford Research Institute of the remote viewing program there. And then he moved off to his own company, and he worked on what's called zero-point energy or zero-point energy field or zero-point fluctuations. It now has many different names. We first called it zero-point energy. What that means is when you get down smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and this is anywhere in the physical world at any time, you get down to very, very small dimensions, 10 to the minus who knows what, 35, 34 Planck length, very, 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 very small. You always find fluctuating energy there. We used to think between galaxies there would be a perfect vacuum. There is no such thing as a perfect vacuum. In fact, some people call the energy down there the vacuum energy. And the energies down there happen to be very large, what are called energy densities, energy per, say, centimeter cubed. They're on the level of what goes off in nuclear explosions. So we are talking about fluctuating energies there that are enormous. They appear to be randomly fluctuating, but obviously there might be there's information in there, because if I go down, into my body, a cell, one cell, and I get smaller, 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 go to the DNA, get smaller, smaller, smaller. The energy that's coming up to keep my cell together, to keep my body together, is different if I do that with a brick. Okay? But they both have these zero-point energy fluctuations everywhere in space and time. Okay, now, what are the implications of that? At least do I think. And I think this is so logical that you might even agree. The zero-point energy field, that idea, the things we just talked about, it's a thing with a fuzzy boundary. Okay. Notice the zero-point energy field is everywhere and every when communication channel with the UCC. And this is, I guess, what many would call a crazy hypothesis, but this is what I believe is true. The communication channel between the UCC and the physical world, everywhere and every when in the physical world, is due to this ZPE field. Now, Hal Puthoff and I have not discussed this, but let me tell you what Hal did say many years ago, and this was in one of my early blogs. Throughout mankind's cultural history, there has existed the metaphysical concept that man and cosmos are interconnected by a ubiquitous, all-pervasive sea of energy that undergirds and is manifest in all phenomena. This pre-scientific concept of a cosmic energy goes by many names and many traditions, such as Chi, Ki, Kai, Prana, Kahuna, Baraka, Elan Vital, and so forth. We just got a paper out on this, on the internet, searching for the universal matrix. So I am basically hypothesizing that all of these traditions are, in fact, touching entanglement energy. that the ZPE field, which is in the physical world, okay, but it's as small as you can get, and yet it's everywhere, and it's a field, so it's connected with everything, is in a wonderfully mysterious way connected to the UCC, where all information exists. So I'm now saying that's what entanglement energy indeed is. And we know people in the physical world manipulate this all the time. Um, um, and that may be enough. But again, as a physicist, I wanted to see if I could get one step lower, and that's what the UCC is. So could it be entanglement energy is basically the same as these? Now, I want to get closer to personal life here and how this might fit up with ARV. Your personal life, you have this sense of a oneness of you, which is sort of amazing. And yet you are composed of 30 trillion cells or so, right? Give or take a few trillion, I imagine. But that number is just so high for practical purposes, it's essentially infinite. So you have all these cells. In each one of these cells, you have DNA, okay? And your DNA is unique. You have like a unique DNA vibrational signature. Your life, so here's a physical world. Here's one event in your life. You went to a baseball game. At that baseball game, you experienced a lot of now moments, but you defined it as a baseball game. I like to use events now, and the now moment is one kind of an event, but and that's the only time you're really conscious is in a now moment. But what is your life? Moment of conception, lots of events, lots of stuff going on in your life, all with your DNA. That's why I'm calling it your life. And yeah, at some point, you're going to leave the physical world and go on to a better place, another place. Okay, so I just put this here. It's very much like this, but I wanted to put this symbol because this is getting down to just you. This is specifically you with your DNA. I like to think of this as the psi conscious you, but that's you in experiencing this. Now, I see a connection with the law of attraction. The law of attraction comes from channeling from Esther and Jerry Hicks. Esther Hicks does the channeling, the teachings of Abraham, and there's just so much in there that resonates with me and a lot of others. And the law of attraction is the fundamental law, they basically say, of the universe. That which is like unto itself is drawn. So, I mean, there are kind of lessons there. I think that helps explain why your events in the UCC, they're probably, it's hard to say that they're organized since it's all one thing, but your DNA vibrational signature seems to tie it all together. You know, you have a lot more than that. You've got unique bacteria in your body. You've got unique history. Actually, you have unique future. All of those, moment to moment to moment, I think keep you together. From the moment of conception, there were only 2 DNA cells, but very quickly there were a lot more. and that which is like unto itself is drawn. And so, in some mysterious way, which I certainly can't explain, I believe this was acting and is still acting. And let me see now if I can connect this with ARV. Here are lots of events. So you're in here, all these events, your events. This gets to be very personal. You should think of this as your events coming out of the UCC. Now, notice, and we do this, of course, all the time. You ignore events all the time. You wouldn't want to carry around with you, your last 10 years, your last life history with you. It's great when it comes back as a memory, when it's triggered or you request it. But we know that you can decrease the entanglement energy. They're still in the UCC, and they might even be here in a very subtle way, but let's for now assume that they're just in the UCC. So they've disappeared in terms of you forgetting about them. Now, between two things, you can increase the entanglement. A memory might do that, and then you work on it some more, and more things about it will come, for example. You can work physical objects and really get into them and look at them harder and harder. Really appreciate them more. That'll increase the entanglement, right? You can think of things like that you can do. Well, let's now imagine that this is your RV event, okay? And this is your feedback event. One of the things that you can do is increase the entanglement further. There is a handshake. Everything is connected to everything else, but with your intention, expectation, and attention, you can get a stronger and stronger handshake between your remote viewing session and your feedback session. And you can enhance entanglement, just like you would do in other ways. The only difference is, yeah, this is through time, but so what? Time doesn't have any great meaning. Now, this has got a lot of stuff on it, but I would like you to understand it because it's sort of a whole. These turned out to be recommendations from the ARV model coming, which looks like this. So we have the UCC here. We then have the physical world. All of the physical world comes out of the UCC. So there it is. Here is, and this is the first time I've ever done it, but it feels good to me. Hope it feels good to you. There are in this gold circle, I guess, orange circle, all of the ARV hits for all the coordinates, but let's just focus on one of them for now, for target a specific coordinate. Because when you do your ARV, you do them one coordinate at a time. But there is a place in the UCC that contains all of them. But for now, let's just focus on one, which was a hit. So that's all that's in here. Well, what do we have? We have our RV session. Here's you doing your RV session. Here's you doing your feedback session, right? You, the feedback session. Here's that entanglement we talked about. And I'll give suggestions how to increase it. But notice there's no entanglement between the RV and the AJ. We don't want any entanglement at all if we possibly can help it. We want to maximize this entanglement And yeah, when you're doing that analysis and judging, and here you're analyst judge, and yes, I know you do self-judging, some of you, but that's okay. Um, you might pick up some intuitive things about the feedback target, and that's okay in a small way. Don't work too hard at it because you'll probably link both. Now, my recommendations. Um, the biggest one, and this comes from so many people in our field that I just have no other way of emphasizing it to you except like this. If you meditation, because meditation gets rid of day-to-day stuff and opens you up to getting stuff from your deeper subconscious, from your higher self, from whatever you want to call it. It allows you to communicate with the UCC because you're getting rid of the normal noise. And so really do some sort of cool down, um, uh, um, and maximize uh, where you actually maybe imagine really getting a great session. That this is one of these wonderful hits in here. Uh, Feel really good about this session. And just know that the entanglement energy is really strong for this hit. And then the same thing for the feedback session. Meditate on maximizing the hit energy between all your future RV and feedback sessions. The current one too, but you're not going to change that. You have the ability to change all of the futures. You haven't yet experienced these in the physical conscious world, but they're all in the UCC. And if meditate is not comfortable, you can use another technique. You're basically communicating with your subconscious higher self. Some people refer to them as guides. Um, and then the other two suggestions are: one, be clear about your intentions. Always pay attention to what's going on in your mind. Remember, this is you that's doing this, remote viewing and the feedback, and your expectations. Be confident. Picture getting more and more hits and what that's going to feel like, that sort of thing. And then I believe people who are doing this for the longest term, some people just come in, play with it, see something interesting and move on. But those of us who are in it for the longer term, I think, why is this important to you and why is it important to others? I believe that's, we are all here. We're all connected. We are using that. And I think the purpose needs to be for some good purpose in your mind. Okay, so these hits are things. Okay, I think, yes, other things you can use are affirmations. Curiosity is an interesting one. But, just trying to figure it out and always look for, the curiosity of, it's just such a positive, growing feeling. So I think having that around is helpful as well. And then in terms of paying attention, surprises are really good. A surprising image, a surprising word. That doesn't take away from the ones that come in anyway when they have the feeling of coming from your subconscious. But surprises are particularly valuable. Now, this in this series is the last one I'm going to show. But this is how I see you, each of us, and the universe. Here's the universe of collective consciousness. This is you. Okay? If that's you, right, you're in there. Well, this is you too. Notice you have a fuzzy boundary. And essentially, in you, with the fuzzy boundary, is the UCC. This is how I see each of us, even though we generally don't see ourselves that way. Here's a quote from Skip Atwater. He was he initiated and he was the head of the Army RV unit through its whole existence. This might have been something like 20 years. Now here's Skip Atwater. So he thought about all this stuff as well. And he says, some say that we pass from spirit into the physical at birth, and conversely pass from the physical world into spirit at death. I say that we never passed from the spirit. This has such meaning because what he is calling spirit, the soul, is down in the UCC, and in some marvelous, mysterious way, communicating with us in this marvelous physical world we're in. But it's clear that my normal ego intellect is not doing it. And being in precognition has made me feel exactly the same way. Once you see these wonderful matches, precognitive matches, there's a lot more going on in our universe than just the hard physical. Okay. Questions, comments? Gee, Marty, you're crazy. Gee, Marty, I didn't understand any of this. No feedback. I don't know what that means. Okay. But I get that a lot. Most speakers do for one reason or another. Okay. So no one wants to do it. I'm just giving you time to think of and absorb what we just went through, because it was a lot. You're basically a spiritual being is one bottom line, and you can increase entanglement energy is another bottom line. So let's go back now from last month and get really into the hands-on part. So here last month, there was a tasking, and here was the tasking statement. Now, for some of you who are brand new, we do everything over the internet and primarily use emails, but everything is saved on what's called a server, so we keep good records of everything that is being done. And here's the event. Will SPY is the Standard & Poor 500 index, like the Dow 30, but this is the bigger one, 500, divided by 10. So that's the numerical value, how they get the numerical value. And will it move up between April 3rd and May 7th? Okay, we give the starting time, and then we give a link. And when you click that link, that's when you'll get your 6-digit coordinate that we talked about. And we're going to do that after we go through the feedback. Okay, so the actual prediction Actually, that's an old one. In fact, I'm going to take that out right now. That is not accurate. Sorry. That's for a different one. Okay, so we're going. I fouled up. Yeah, okay. This is the one we're doing from May 1 to June 4. So stay with me. There was a little glitch there. You know, I reuse these, but I obviously try to update them. And this one shows the change from May 1, which I circled here. So this is prices of the SPY, and this is time. And what you're actually seeing are hourly changes. Okay, so, you know, the red was down in that hour, the high and low. But here's May, here's June 4th, and you can see that it actually went down. So the outcome is a no, the price change is down. Okay, so we're about to get into feedback, and the feedback session is key, and it's being done with your subconscious. I came across this a while ago. I can't vouch for it in any way, but I like the idea of it. It says your subconscious mind, your higher self, that which is in touch with the UCC, they came up with a number of 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. And I say it's probably an underestimate. You know, the capabilities of consciousness are clearly enormous, and there are plenty of examples out there. I do want to read this quote about entanglement from Dean Radin. One of the most surprising discoveries of modern physics is that objects aren't as separate as they may seem. When you drill down into the core of even the most solid-looking material, separateness dissolves. All that remains, like the smile of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, are relationships extending curiously throughout space and time. These connections were predicted by quantum theory and were called spooky action at a distance by Albert Einstein. This is one of the few times he was wrong. One of the founders of quantum theory, Erwin Schrödinger, dubbed this peculiarity entanglement, saying, I would not call that one, but rather the characteristic trait of quantum mechanics. So consciousness is fundamental, entanglement is key. Okay, what I have here is the actual feedback link from last month, which notice it says the same event, will SPY move up between 5-1 and 6-4, which was yesterday. The winning side was no. And normally this would come in your email and you would just click on it. Those of you, and I don't know if any of you were here last month, but now would be the time. All you'd have to do is click on it and you could do your feedback now. But what I'm going to do is put it in the chat box so you can do that. I did send it in the email. So, but let me put it in the chat box. Okay. Now, those of you who did not do it last month, let me go into feedback more now. Okay. Okay, and I always recommend that what will come up, just to show you how easy it is a page like this. It'll repeat the event. All you do is put in your email address, which was the same one you put in when you made your prediction, and we're going to do that shortly as a different example, of course, for next month. So you each have your own coordinate, and do your feedback with positive intention, attention, expectation, and why not add a little love? Okay, now if you didn't have a session, let's talk about how we would do one. Okay, Anita, this is one that you did last month, and notice this was the one I used as an example to flash. um, and if you'd like to talk about it, turn on your mic. But notice during the feedback session, what you emphasize are all the good things. I'm going to show you next what's called an A-B, things that really match. Yeah, go ahead, Anita. What did you mark as matches on this one? I noticed right away you got water. Well, that was wonderful.
Yes, I did get water and blue and something tall, yellow. The lights to me looked yellow. The blue pink gave me an impression of purple, and the light shining on the water almost green.
Oh, is that
It's
what you saw as green? Was this?
yes.
Okay, okay.
The gray brown color of the lights shining on the building. Uh, it was definitively something angular and tall, so the buildings made sense to me.
And I see these round things potentially being from there.
Yes, yes.
Roundish,
I
partial
got the
round.
impression of something round, a
Roundish.
roundish, tall, and there was water present at the site. So
Yep, yep.
yes.
And maybe
The
even salty. I don't know if this is ocean or.
Yes, I wasn't sure, so I didn't mark the salty or the warm or the
Right.
I can imagine there could be wind at the buildings, but I didn't mark those things I wasn't sure of.
Okay.
So it's
So,
just the colors and the tall and the structures.
yep. So notice and you did self-judging, right?
Yes.
So notice the way she was talking was really like a judge. Now you're at feedback session and you do the same thing, but now, with big smiles on your face because you got all the major things that led to a hit. This was in that hit collection. And very well done. Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Now, is feedback really important? It is for increasing your hit rates and for learning about yourself. Back at Stanford Research Institute in the 70s and probably 80s, they did what were called outbounder experiments, and they were exceptionally successful. And what they did there is the remote viewer, everything was blind, but the remote viewer did their session totally blind, but then they were taken out to the feedback target. So they had a lot of time to spend there, to experience it. Their senses could get it firsthand, and that's what we try to simulate here. So they were clearly entangling big time. But we can do, and you see, I mean, we have many, 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 many successful examples that you could do the same thing with photo sites. Okay, so in summary, be happy if you get a hit, even if you get a miss. You are working such cutting edge stuff, and misses are there to teach you. Misses are learning, as are passes. There's always something to learn. Joe McMonagle says it's all psychological, and the learning is about yourself. What does it take to get a better description of targets? And then Galileo says you cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself. And that is so cool because the within himself is the way I would see the subconscious mind or the higher self, all of that. And that's where you need to look for the answers to this. You know, I and other teachers can only tell you what we feel is best based on our experience, but much of what we say connects to you. It connects to your subconscious, and we know that, and we put it out there directly, and so it's up to you to do more. Okay, any questions on that part? Okay, we'll get through the whole presentation. Now we're going to get to do a prediction. So here, interesting. Now I'm clearly doing too much. I will tell you what the event is because I wrote it down. Here is the event. I'm going to put it in the chat box. Notice I put that in today. This is the server ID that makes it unique. So I'm going to copy it. And let me just, in case we come back to this, I want to actually have it on here. But not in white. Okay, so that's the tasking. Will the SPY again move up between today and July 2nd? And we'll have another one of these webinars on July 3rd. So what do we do to make predictions? Well, again, you get this in the email with the event there usually, and then you would just click right there. So since you really can't click right there, I'm going to give you that link, which I copied here, and which I'll now put in the text box. Okay, so some of you who have done this before already have enough information to go forward and get their coordinate, because once you click that, once you click this, and I just gave you that one there, this comes up. And again, this is all personalized. So the coordinate you're about to get, you'll get after you put in your email address. It's for the particular webinar workshop group. I hope newbies will join one of our other groups, sports or financial. And then we get ready to do your remote viewing session. So the coordinate will indeed come up on the next page. And there's other stuff there as well, but just use the coordinate. But the newbies, I wanted to get you a little better organized in terms of what you might do if you're brand new here. So on the top of a sheet of paper, put the coordinate that you got from clicking there. Now first, let me make sure you all have a coordinate. In fact, I should show you. Maybe I'll do that page just so you can see it. I won't be doing a session now. Workshops. Ah. Did you guys get, do you see the coordinate on that page? It says it right at the top. It's almost impossible to miss. I think that's, here we go. Okay, so this is the one. Normally you would click that. This would come up. You put in your email. You click here. Up comes this page. Here is your coordinate with the Q. So do all of you have that so we can move on? Was there a problem with this link to getting it there? I guess I could have clicked that link too. Right. Okay. So I'm going to assume you all have that. And let's go back to our PowerPoint. And so you put your coordinate up here, you put your name, your date, the time. This is good for records. You know, everybody saves these, at least for a while. And underneath, after you feel like you've done a good enough cool down, and I'm about to give you 10 minutes, with a cool down, I take half of the time to cool down to get into the right place where you feel you're really connecting up with the feedback. Then on a sheet of paper, and people do it with their own styles, but usually you repeat the coordinate and maybe do a little squiggle. We call that an ideogram. Some people see it as a pictogram. That gets things going. And then just be open to receiving information. Often you'll get the big picture first. We call that a gestalt. Like Anita got the water, or maybe even purple. Sketches come in. You write sketches. But then also you've got textures, colors, smells, tastes, dimensions, geometry, sounds, dynamics. All of that go here. And then typically on the right, I recommend you leave a place for what are called analytical overlays. This turns out to be very important in this process because what you are learning to do better and better as you do each one of these is to listen to your subconscious mind, your higher self, rather than your ego intellectual self. You know, a little bit of it has to be around so you can write stuff on the transcript. But when you recognize that you've gone to an intellectual thing, you know, you got red, you got round, and you say ball, it must be a ball. Well, no, there, you know, tomatoes are red and round also. There are a lot of things that are red and round. When you go to the intellect, that's called an analytical overlay. Okay, it was Joe McMonagle and Ed May. Joe McMonagle's probably the best known public remote viewer. Terrific. He'll be at our next conference. Ed May is the scientist that's worked with this the longest. He took over from Hal Puthoff. And they concluded that intention, attention, and expectation play a very important role in applications as well as research. So when you do your cool down, when you do your feedback, really make sure your intention and expectations are all as clear as possible and positive. So the Q, describe and sketch your coordinate, your feedback target for the target reference number or coordinate that you now have, and do take some time to do that cool down, to get connected with the target. Now I'm going to put on a HemiSync thing, which comes from the Monroe Institute. It's 10 minutes. Um, use roughly half, I recommend, for cool down, but the viewer is in charge. So you do what feels best for you. And half for doing your session. Set your intention, expectation, and witness what your sub provides. And write it down on your piece of paper. And there will be a very quiet 5-minute notice. But don't fall asleep. But take about 5 minutes to do cool down, and then I'll make a notice about a minute before. So here we go. So start your cool down. Breathe in and out. It's like a meditation. Okay, you've got about a minute to go. You might go down into your sub and ask for a little bit more information. Okay. Let's get rid of this. Come on back to your normal state. Remote viewing is a somewhat different state, certainly, isn't it? I hope it feels good. It feels good for most of us. Just the quiet receiving, listening, getting in touch with your subconscious. I hope you all feel that way too. Okay, that's fine, Tony. I don't know what the background noise was. Hopefully it didn't disturb you too much, Lila. Okay, let's now go back to here. So you now have your remote viewing session. Guess what's next? We need to analyze and judge it, just like we said at the beginning. And so let's talk about that. Yes, no, up, down. So we're going to match a transcript to two possible targets. So here is where the page that you got your coordinate from, this is what that looks like. You now browse for your transcript, which I said this is sort of reverse order, but that's okay. You have to first get your transcript onto your computer or smartphone, whatever it is that you got this page on. So let's just say computer in general. You now want to get it there in a spot that you can bring it into your computer and submit it, because it's that submission that then goes into our server, and we have it as part of our records. And only then can you actually do the judging. Turns out your picture won't even be chosen until after you do that. So, is there any questions on that? I'm looking at the chat box, but the next thing you do is simply get your transcript to your computer. And so you do that with the browse, and then you submit it, and it goes to our computer. And when you do that, then we'll be in a position to do the judging. So step one, okay. I wish there was a way I could tell if you're doing it. If you've got, oh, there actually is a way. Okay, so I can see Lila has done it. Okay. If you're having any difficulty, let me know. Um, I see Lila has done it okay. It takes some time to go through the process, so just take as much time as it takes. Okay. I think it's time for me to move on. Okay, so while you are getting yours up there, and I don't see anybody telling me they're having a problem, it just takes a while, especially if it's the first time you're doing it. The next thing that'll happen is you'll come up with the choice of two photos, and then that's where you do your judging, and that's where you'll put in what are called confidence rankings. So let me talk about that. Well, but first, let me give you a description of what analysis judging is not. This is a great cartoon. Our skeptic, I alone know the contents of this envelope. Our remote viewer says it's a charcoal drawing of a woodchuck eating a small orange. And the skeptic, of course, not willing to believe anything under any circumstance, says, "You little fraud, but that's a long way from an ink drawing versus charcoal of a beaver eating a tangerine." So it's don't expect to be right on with everything. You know, your subconscious often will do metaphors. It'll only give you partial information. It's not going to give you everything exact. So, okay, now, ultimately, you're going to be judging this in terms of a 0 to 7 system. Now, 0, 1, 2 goes from no correspondence up to what is really chance. You know, you'll just get a few things correct, less than half, um, generally, much less than half generally. And, you know, that's chance, but often you'll get something, but it's still chance. If you give it a 3 on the 0 to 7 scale, you'll have a mixture of correct and incorrect elements, but enough of the former to indicate the viewer has made contact with the target. So yes, you're right on the border, you had some psychic contact. A 4 goes up to good correspondence with several matchable elements intermixed with some incorrect information. we allow you to put in non-integer values because people, and this is a difficult process. You know, what do you think? Where is it? And people might differ by one looking at the same transcript or target. We make confidence ranking of 3.5. We call it wagerable. You'd be willing to bet or invest, you know, a few bucks on it. That's 3.5. You know, if you give it a 4, obviously that's even stronger. Of course, you had several matchable elements that you felt comfortable with. A 5 goes up, and this was done by Russell Targ. He added the words unambiguous, unique, matchable elements. So now you've got something you can point to that you feel really strong about that's unambiguous and unique in terms of the match to that target. And then 6 and 7 get into this analytical overlay issue where you might name the function of the target, you might even name the target. And by the time you get to 7, there's very little incorrect information. By 6, you know, there's also very little. 5, it goes down. And this is what Targ did. And, you know, it's pretty good, but it doesn't, you know, there's just still a little bit too much vagueness, in my opinion, and in the opinion of Joe McMonagle. So I want to go and show you first the an example, and this actually is Lila, of what we call the A-B system, where you mark, you compare it first to your one photo site and then the other. Here we'll just, because this was a hit and all we'll show is this one, what you do on your transcript, remember you're now a judge, when you're comparing it to photo site B, you mark all the things that match, like hills and mountains and sky. Notice there's no A against any of these. There's no hills, mountains, or skies, or trees in picture A because there was no A there. Notice her shape here has an A and a B. Okay, so it could match both. There's some that match neither, right? But the idea is when you're judge, you get out your transcript, you have your picture, and you mark everything that matches. And sometimes, I don't see, she didn't do this, but oh yeah, there's one. Sometimes you do a little b. Then you count up all of them. So she got 24 B's. There's probably another little b here someplace, but I use that as a half. And for the A, she got 13. The total was 34. So her ratio here is well over half. I would say if this is the technique you're using, you need to be at half to give yourself a 3.5, half or more. And it's got to feel right. It's got to feel like you really got good stuff. You were there, you were psychic. So she gave herself a 5 based on that. And then for an A CR, confidence ranking of a 2. Now, Joe McMonagle, and I stole this from him with his permission, has a slight different angle on this because he believes what I call first impression gestalts are very important. When you first look at this picture, what do you see? You know, you might see, different people would see different things. You know, as a remote viewer, again, it flashes on you. That's why I did that flash exercise. But you might get the shape, like she got here. You might get the white, water, things like that that come in. Joe believes those are very important and believes you should give 50% weight to the first impression gestalts as opposed to just the A-B system. So the first impression gestalts are the big picture gestalt things. You know, smacks you in the face, gets you in the ballpark, and there can be more than one first impression gestalt. Okay, so how do we give it 50% weight? Well, here's what we do. This was the A-B approach, the number of matches of A divided by the total match, number of matches of B divided by the total potential match, okay, her 34 versus 24, something like that. And then before that, you had the first impression gestalt A and B, which can be between 0 and 1. Okay, 1 would be the max, 0 would be the min in terms of first impression gestalts. So let's go back here and let's see what we would, and notice we then multiply the sum by 3.5 because this could be a maximum of 1, this could be a maximum of 1, so you could get up to 7 if this was 1 and this was 1. So let's look at what we have here, okay? In this case, her figs seemed really good to me. I mean, she got the shape, she got the hills, the mountains, the skies, outdoors, water, I mean, she got it all. So I gave her a fig of 1 just for this example. She did not do this. I did this afterwards. The ratio of 24 to 34 is 0.7. So all you do is take the 1 plus 0.7. And I guess I put the figs first because I agree with Joe. Those are important. And I got a 5.95. She gave herself a 5. And as I said before, when we've had different people judge, they often differ by like 1 is that's the kind of differences we see, and which are not too unusual. So this technique gave a 6, but this is the one I recommend. And okay, so notice this is what you're saying about your prediction using either of those techniques. You really have to believe that you got yourself good correspondence with the 6, with good analytical information, naming the function of the target, and relatively little incorrect information. And I think she pretty much did that with the mountains and the water. So I think that's okay. And if after you do that, you think you ought to lower it, you can lower it, because the next thing you do is how do you put your CRs in? Well, that's this page that I showed you before. Here are the that example, an example coordinate. The 2 pictures would be here. I'm not showing them. I don't want to upset any of yours because each of your pictures are different. But then right here is a pull down menu which goes 0 to 7. I can't do it on the PowerPoint. And you do it for A and you do it for B. And always put in some notes about how you're feeling about this. Feel really confident. It was really good. I got so much. Some people put in everything they got in here and their feelings. I think the more the better, because this becomes part of your record. Once you click submit, you're done. That's it. Okay. So let me now go. I can go to a special place where I can see what you submitted. And to do that, I need to go here and here and here. So what I'm about to get is information from the server on this one here. Predictions. And we are the webinar. Here. And this is the one, 7.2. Okay, so far I have two. One's a pass, and no, I guess I have three. One's a pass, one's a yes, and one's a no. Typical. Not typical, but what's typical is that they don't all go in the same direction. And even sometimes when they do, you don't have 100% confidence, high confidence, but not 100. Okay, I hope, is there anybody else who's still working this, or are they just sort of watching? Let me know if you're still working it. Otherwise, I'll go on. Okay, so this may very well be it. Okay, we have time. I'd like uh, these to go. Why don't we? Okay, so what I'm looking at here, it looks like this might be your first one. No, it says no history. Oh, no, that's for Matt. So, Matt, congratulations. I think this is your very first one. And you gave a 2.5 to the first one and a 0. Let's look now. Remember, these are all classes. Some people might say by showing pictures now, we could be hurting you from before, but these are really intended to be classes. And ultimately, it's your responsibility to get so nothing bothers you. When you do your remote viewing session, you're a laser beam right into the feedback target. But I think what I will do is look at Anita's and Firestorm, which is Lila. And I think it'll be interesting to look at what they did, and let's see if we agree. We can be independent judges for them. So here's Anita. And she gave a 5.5 to side 2, which is photo side B. So this is photo side B. I just clicked on it. Okay, that's interesting. And remember, the target's photo site could be anything that can be photographed. And this is her transcript. Okay, Anita, I wish I could rotate that. I can, but it'll take me a minute. And then maybe you can tell us why you felt the 5.5. So I need my Snagit. I put, okay. Okay, Nita, you're still with us. I'd love you to be able to talk to us about this.
I got something moving outward, like almost like something swirling and flowing, reminding me of water paint flowing over something around.
Okay.
And the color was so bright and artificial to me. It definitely, the picture of planet Earth stood out.
Oh, really?
Absolutely unambiguous, that motion I got. And also the winding shape, I got the idea of something winding or moving in circles. And it was big, not like the other photo site.
Okay, I'll try to get the other picture on at the same time.
Yes.
There we go.
And I got the idea of looking down from far away, like
You
more
really
like
got
planets than the fault scene of the Temple of
okay.
Delphi with
And
the other
so
one.
you said that here. You put those impressions here.
Yes.
Let me see. Where was the Earth one? That was a good one.
The motion outward is the top left,
Oh,
and
this
next
guy.
it
Ah,
almost flower thing, and the round winding motion shape dimension below. And I gave myself at the bottom a move command because I felt I got stuck somewhere there, and I got the circular shape and the big.
yeah. Okay. Huh. And when you judged it, did you judge it using Joe's technique?
Yes, I used Joe's technique. I
Okay.
got a 0.75.
Okay. Very good. No, that's really good. Yeah, I see. And that's what, and you need to go through just like you obviously did,
Yes,
element by element. Boy,
yes.
this looks just like the tornado too.
It-
Hurricane, the hurricane there. Mhm. You see,
There's a lot
this
of
one,
aspects that I did not judge that wasn't in any of the sites. That's
right, and that's okay. Um, the Earth one, which you're saying, well, motion outward.
yeah, it's almost like that
I would have
twirly
trouble. Yeah, I'd have trouble marking that if I was a judge. Though some of the shapes
okay.
here, but you know what you got when you got the feeling of it. See, and that's
Yeah,
why.
it's like the flow of the oceans with the motion of the earth, that idea of like ink flowing or water flowing or
Yeah. Okay. That's why some people like self-judging. Um, okay, that is beautiful. Thank you. And Lila, let's do yours as well. I think it's good for people to see, other people's styles. Um, Notice, she does this and she has this is what's called the ideogram for newbies who don't know that. It gets things started. And some people develop a whole language on this, but we won't get into that. Um, there are webinars out there on that. I think Lynn Buchanan does that. Okay. So let's just try to clean this up a little bit and go there. Okay, Lila, you're here. And so you did. Um, I know your CR has to be here. Okay, since she did side 2, you did side 1. And that's the one you gave. Okay. That was what you think the target is, Lila, correct?
Yes, that's what I think the target is.
Okay, and now let's look at your transcript. And do that. Not there. But your transcript is here. I don't know why they always turn out to be the wrong angle. Well, I guess that's okay, but can do that. And that. And go. Okay. I have to open the editor.
Oh, you didn't get my transcript with the A's and B's on it.
No, I'd have to go to my email for that. So
Oh.
I'll bring that in and maybe use it for the next month. But
Okay.
now, okay. So this is you. So now I just have to rotate you. Don't get dizzy while I rotate you. And rotate you clockwise. Okay, so there you are. And now let's go back here. Okay. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, why don't you just tell us? We're looking at it ourselves, but we can see some of the things right away.
Yeah, so my first gestalt is that curvy line on the far left. Yes, that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really sold me on the photo compared to the other photo site.
Mm.
And I really felt, I really felt a lot of this photo. Describing my feelings was a little challenging.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
One of the things I left off was organic.
Okay.
I definitely felt something organic.
Okay.
And maybe that's where the floating and the gay comes from. It was just a happy feeling.
Right.
Very, very comfortable, happy. The same with the sounds. I don't know that I necessarily hear anything, but that's how I felt. I felt
laughing, hushed.
Hushed. Yeah.
And this is a happy picture in your mind.
Sure. Flowers are happy.
It sure is. Sure.
Yeah.
And nice bright colors. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My textures came first as well. I felt something very, very soft. Spongy, wasn't really kind of buoyant. But that's kind of what flowers are to me. They're soft.
Mm-hmm.
They're full of water, so of course they're spongy. And the pastels in the colors. The pastels, I think I was tuning into the muted background.
Mm-hmm. No, you got red in there.
Oh yeah, red and
certainly green.
And dots. Dots came to me at the end, and there's kind of dots in there.
The white dots here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's light dots. There's red dots in the flower.
Certainly bright.
And, yeah. And then, of course, my other ideograms point to this too. So.
Right. Okay. And yeah, this is more like maybe like the other, but raindrops.
No, mostly just dots. I was going for kind of polka dots or something, just dots.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And you gave, did you use Joe's method?
I did. I gave this a 4.
Okay. Excellent.
And I gave the other photo site a 2.
Right. Lila, thank you. I mean, this is so good for newbies and old bees to see the styles of different people. Okay, now this is where in any of the groups, when all of the transcripts are in, so the due date for the transcripts is passed, I go to this exact page, but for the particular group, I look at what happened and I can see the confidence rankings. I love that people put in words. So I look at that, and hopefully there's a consensus. In this time, not a consensus. Had this been maybe a 3.5 instead of a 4, I might have gone with the 5.5, but a 4 is, it's pretty
I
good.
almost gave it a 3.5.
Well, okay.
So
In this world of ours, a pass is not a bad thing, first of all. So I tell everybody, don't push it. But the 5.5 and versus 3.5, I don't know. Somehow I feel like I'm pushing it. I'm going to pass. Okay. I feel like I'm pushing it. So I'm just going to pass. That's all. I could have easily just put in the side 2 and then it would have made a specific prediction. But I'm doing a webinar workshop and then I will enter it. Oh, and let's put almost went with 5.5, which was side 2, yes, which meant up. Okay, so that's it for the record. We'll get to see that later next month. But I'm putting in a pass, and I have webinar workshop. And then here we go. And so that prediction is in as a pass. And I just got an email, which looks just like this, which says it was a pass. And and that goes to everybody in the group. So everybody in the group gets what the prediction is because they may want to invest or wager on it. But remember, it's only a day, so you really have to work with what are called the derivatives. That's another whole topic. So that's just what we did here. Okay. You know what I didn't do, but it's too late. I didn't put in specific numbers. They'll go in as 0, 0. But usually you would put in specific numbers. So if I had gone with the 5.5, I would have put a 5.5 here for the in the drop-down menu. Finishing this off now, just a few more here. Let me just summarize what I think all this is about. Key thing here is you. Your deep down psychic, precognitive, retrocausality, your capabilities of communicating with the UCC using the entanglement energy, called by lots of other names, but that's what you're using here, guiding here. That communication channel is between you at 2 different times. So that's why I call it precognitive telepathy. It is mind to mind, certainly in a way, and it's precognitive. So it's your mind in both places. This entanglement energy is available to you always, anytime, from your subby, your higher self. Working with the UCC directly is what you're doing with this entanglement energy. And this mindset of strong, loving entanglements, I really believe will follow your clear intentions, attention, and expectation about applying your entanglement energy. So all of this stuff, everything we've done is clearly entangled together, and all of this is designed with you being the designer and the creator ultimately to get lots and lots of hits. So with that, I did this one before with Skip, but it's so valuable. It is really a deeper part of yourself. That's what makes this so marvelous. That ARV, it's not obvious that it is a way to really learn how to get in touch with your subconscious, higher self, even your soul. And with that, I wish all of you health, wealth, and this is deep wealth, wealth that gets shared, and wisdom. So that's the end of the presentation. I am open to questions, comments.
Thank you, Marty.
You are very welcome. I enjoy doing this, as you know, and I couldn't do it if I didn't have people to do it with. So thank you. Okay, I will end it here, and all of you keep precogging.